So this is part 2 of Star Wars The Force Awakens. And again, was adapted into a book by Elizabeth Schaefer, and the illustrations in the book are by Brian Rood. And it's based off of the screenplay by Lawrence Kasdan, J.J. Abrams, and Michael Arndt. So here we are, part 2. So when we last left off, Rey was keeping BB-8 safe and not selling him for food. Meanwhile, Kylo Ren was torturing Poe aboard his ship, hoping to extract any information about the map and the Resistance plans. Poe was in so much pain that he had told Kylo about BB-8, but he had managed to keep the location of the Resistance base a secret. As Kylo left Poe tied up in his cell, Poe worried that he wouldn't be able to resist the First Order enforcer much longer. Hours passed. Poe dreaded the moment Kylo would return. Finally, the cell door opened and a stormtrooper stepped inside. "Kylo Ren wants the prisoner," the soldier said. The stormtrooper led Poe from the cell, then removed his helmet. It was FN 2187. "Listen carefully," the stormtrooper said. "I'm helping you escape. Can you fly a TIE fighter?" Poe was stunned, but quickly recovered. "I can fly anything," he said confidently. And this is the First Order Star Destroyer, the Finalizer. The Finalizer is a First Order Star Destroyer with a dagger-shaped silhouette, reminiscent of the Imperial battleships of yesteryear. And that just means in years past. The pair ran to the hangar where all the ships were kept. FN 2187 spotted a Special Forces TIE fighter and took Poe to the cockpit. "I always wanted to fly one of these things," Poe said. Quickly, he powered up the engine and flew them into space. But the First Order wasn't going to let them get away that easily. The Star Destroyer fired on the escaping TIE fighter. FN 2187 fired back and took out an entire line of cannons. Poe started to cheer for his new friend. Woo! But then he realized they had yet to introduce themselves. "I'm Poe Dameron. What's your name?" "FN 2187, the stormtrooper replied. Poe thought the soldier deserved a better name than that. "FN, huh? I'm calling you Finn. That all right?" Finn couldn't help smiling. "Yeah, I like that." Poe flew the TIE fighter toward Jakku. He told Finn that they had to find his droid, BB-8. But as they drew closer to the planet, the First Order Star Destroyer regained control of its weapons. Oh no. It crashed. The Star Destroyer fired on the TIE, sending the small fighter spiraling toward Jakku's sandy surface. Finn managed to eject before the ship hit the ground, but there was no sign of Poe. Finn could find only the pilot's flight jacket. Suddenly, the crashed TIE fighter began sinking into the dune beneath it. It had landed in quicksand. Finn didn't want to leave Poe behind, but if he didn't run, he would certainly be pulled into the sinking sand. Reluctantly, he fled from the crashed ship, carrying Poe's jacket. Oh, it looks like they're going to meet Rey soon. Once he was safe, Finn looked around. He had no idea where he was. Sand stretched in every direction, and the sun was beating down on him. Unless he found water and shelter, he wouldn't last very long. Finn removed his armor and used Poe's jacket to shield himself from the heat of the sun. After walking for hours, he spotted a small outpost in the distance. He was saved! Finn ran to the outpost and collapsed in a trough of water, drinking greedily. Meanwhile, 2 of Uncker's thugs were attacking Rey and trying to steal BB-8. After years of living alone in the desert, Rey knew how to take care of herself. She quickly knocked out the thugs and spun around, looking for any other threats. As she turned, she saw a young man next to a trough of water, looking at BB-8 in shock. The young man was Finn. He couldn't believe he had found Poe's droid. Finn tried to explain to Rey as quickly as he could that he knew BB-8's master and the droid was carrying a map for the Resistance. "So you're with the Resistance?" Rey asked. Finn stopped. He didn't want Rey to know that he had been a stormtrooper. "Yes," he lied. Well, it's never good to lie. Uh-oh, they found them. Suddenly, a blaster bolt flew past. Finn turned and saw a platoon of stormtroopers heading straight for them. They needed to run. Now. Shot after shot whizzed past them. The stormtroopers wanted BB-8, and they would stop at nothing to capture the droid for Kylo Ren. "We can't outrun them!" Finn shouted to Rey. Finn was right. They couldn't escape the stormtroopers on foot, but they might be able to in a ship. Rey led them toward a nearby shipyard, desperate for any ship that could get them far, far away from the First Order soldiers. What ship do you think they're going to find? Finn, Rey, and BB-8 ran toward a sleek new ship that was sure to get them off Jakku. But before they could climb on board, First Order TIE fighters opened fire from the sky and destroyed the ship. They took the next available ship they found. It was a hunk of junk, but Rey knew that it belonged to Uncle Plutt. Rey jumped into the cockpit and Finn sat in the gunner's chair. "You ever fly this thing?" Finn asked. Rey was a good pilot, but she had never flown a ship that large. "I can do this. I can do this," she repeated to herself. Think she can do it? Rey concentrated, then flipped a few switches. The engines roared to life, and Rey breathed a sigh of relief. "Stay low and put up the shields, if they work," Finn suggested. Finn watched as the stormtroopers on the ground disappeared from view, but First Order TIE fighters were waiting for them in the air. Two enemy ships screamed past them and started firing. A blast rocked them as Finn tried his best to fire back. "We need cover, quick!" he yelled. "We're about to get some," Rey replied. She banked hard, she turned really hard, and turned the ship toward the field of wreckage out in the desert. And this ship here is the famous Millennium Falcon that made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. Not 14, 12. An extensively modified Corellian light freighter, the Millennium Falcon is a legend in smuggling circles and coveted by many as the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy. So they picked a good ship to get away on. Rey weaved between the crashed ships, trying to lose the TIE fighters. Finn managed to shoot down one of the enemy ships, but there was still one TIE close on their tail. "The cannon's stuck in forward position. I can't move it," Finn yelled. Another blast rocked their ship. Rey needed to find better cover. She spotted the hollowed-out hull of a crashed Superstar destroyer. If she could fly through the big ship, maybe they could lose the TIE fighter, if Rey could keep them from crashing themselves. Do you think she can do it? When Finn saw that Rey was flying toward the Superstar destroyer, he couldn't believe it. "Are we really doing this?" he shouted. But Rey had made up her mind. She flew into one of the Superstar destroyer's exhaust ports, with the TIE fighter close behind. So there's the exhaust port right there, and there's them flying in. Debris pelted both ships, but Rey kept focused on the opening at the other end of the Superstar destroyer. They zoomed closer and closer, and then Rey shouted, "Get ready!" "For what?" Finn cried. In reply, Rey yanked the controls of the ship to the right and flew out into the bright sunlight. Then she cut the engines, flipping the ship around so Finn's gunner turret was pointed right at the TIE fighter. Finn took the hit and fired. The enemy ship exploded in a hail of sparks. Now that the skies were clear, Rey flew into space and away from the First Order ships. Finn climbed down from the gunner's seat and ran to Rey. "How did you do that? That was amazing!" Rey smiled. "That last shot was dead on. You got him with one blast." Finn's excitement started to vanish when he realized what they had to do next. Rey thought he was a member of the Resistance. She would expect him to know how to get to the Resistance base. Somehow, he had to get BB-8 to tell him the location of the base without Rey finding out. Lucky for Finn, their escape from Jakku had damaged the ship's motivator. A puff of steam burst from the grate beneath them. Rey jumped down to inspect the damage. "How bad is it?" Finn shouted down to her. "If we want to live, not good." Rey immediately began fixing the broken motivator. And Finn began talking BB-8 into revealing the location of the Resistance base. I think BB-8's going to tell them. Did I skip a page? No, I didn't. Okay. Kylo Ren was furious. Once again, the map to Luke Skywalker had slipped through his fingers. Kylo went to his quarters to think. And quarters means his room. There he knelt before his most treasured possession, the lost mask of Darth Vader. Vader had been a powerful Sith Lord and the father of Luke Skywalker. Kylo spoke into the silence. Forgive me. I am so close to finding Skywalker. I can sense it. I will finish what you started, he promised. I will find him, and in your name, kill him. Well, that's not very nice. Later, one of Kylo's officers briefed him on the droid's disappearance. It escaped capture aboard a stolen Corellian YT model freighter. The droid stole a freighter? Kylo asked, his patience wearing thin. Not exactly, sir, the lieutenant said. It had help. We believe FN 2187 may have been... Kylo ignited his lightsaber in rage. The lieutenant continued bravely. The two were accompanied by a girl. What girl? Demanded Kylo. He would not let the map elude him a third time. Kylo's master would hardly tolerate another failure. And elude means like it got away from him. Rey had almost finished repairing the ship's motivator, but Finn had not been as successful at getting BB-8 to tell him the location of the Resistance base. As Rey reached for another tool, she asked the question Finn had been dreading. So, where's your base? Finn panicked. Tell her, BB-8. Go ahead. It's okay. BB-8 paused, then beeped obligingly. The Ilenium system, Rey repeated. Yeah, Finn said. Let's get there as fast as we can. As if in response, every part of the ship suddenly lost power. Someone's locked onto us, Rey said, trying to hide her fear. All controls are overridden. The pair ran to the cockpit and looked out. A massive ship loomed above them, pulling them into its cargo bay. What do we do? Rey asked. There must be something. A thud rumbled through the freighter. They were now docked inside the big cargo ship. With no other options, Finn, Rey, and BB-8 hid beneath the floor grating, hoping to take the intruders by surprise. Who do you think the intruders are? Look at that. It's Han Solo and Chewbacca. From their hiding spot, Rey, Finn, and BB-8 heard the ship's ramp lower. Here they come, Finn whispered. Two figures stepped aboard. They immediately began looking through the ship and, within moments, found the trio's hiding place. It was as if they had known exactly where to look. To their surprise, the two figures were not stormtroopers, just an old man and a Wookiee. Where'd you find this ship? The man asked. Nema Outpost, Rey replied. Who had it? Duquesne? I stole it from Uncle Plutt. He stole it from the Irving boys, who stole it from Duquesne. Who stole it from me? The man finished. You tell him Han Solo just stole back the Millennium Falcon for good. He turned to his Wookiee companion. Chewie, we're home. Han Solo, the rebellion general, Rey asked. They couldn't have found a better person to help them if they tried. Rey quickly explained that they had to find the Resistance as soon as possible. Rey repeated what Finn had told her on Jakku, that BB-8 was carrying a map that would help lead to Luke Skywalker. Han seemed reluctant to help them, though. He didn't know if he was ready to become a hero again. He had already lost so much. Rey continued to argue with Han until a loud thud echoed through the Falcon. Don't tell me a Rathtar's gotten loose, Han groaned. What's a Rathtar? Rey asked. They're big and dangerous, Han explained gruffly. He led them out of the Falcon to check on the beasts. But it wasn't Han's fearsome cargo making the racket. The Guavian death gang had broken into Han's ship. Han owed the gang money, and they were there to collect. Get below deck until I say so, Han told Rey and Finn. He motioned to the droid. He'll stay with me. When I get rid of the gang, you can have him back and be on your way. Then he and Chewie took BB-8 and left to confront the gang. I think this is a good spot to leave off from. So look for part 3 soon. Bye, you guys.